Good morning.
Morning.
Across the country, federal actions like immigration raids, data sharing, and harsh criminal prosecutions have torn families apart, and Delaware is not immune. In recent months, Delaware has seen troubling attempts from the federal government to enlist our state departments in immigration enforcement, from pressure to share sensitive voter data to local law enforcement voluntarily cooperating with ICE without clear cause or judicial warrants. But here's the truth: Delaware has the power and the responsibility to push back. In this episode, we'll look at how Delaware can refuse to participate in federal actions that target immigrant families, and also the role state leaders can play, including the Attorney General, General Assembly, and Governor Meyer, in issuing clear guidance to law enforcement and prosecutors. So, routine interactions with our state departments or minor charges do not unfairly threaten someone's immigration status or tear families apart. We'll also explore what real protection looks like on the ground. Legislation like House Bill 94 to keep schools, churches, and medical facilities safe from immigration enforcement, and broader efforts to protect people's privacy, safety, and their constitutional rights. You'll hear about the resources, relief, and community protections families are calling for right now. And most importantly, we'll listen to the voices of people working directly with immigrant families in Delaware, advocates, organizers, and community leaders fighting every day to ensure safety, dignity, and belonging for everyone. I'm delighted we're joined today by Maria Matos, Latin American Community Center founder, and Bryant Garcia of La Esperanza in Georgetown, I'll add. So stay with us. The conversation about what it takes to stand together and what real protection for immigrant communities can and must look like in Delaware starts now. Maria, welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Can you start by sharing what you are seeing right now when working with immigrant families in Delaware and what feels most urgent to the communities you're serving?
At this very moment, from my opinion, I think Delaware needs to protect the voting data from the federal government. That's where I'm at right now. Um, as it relates to the clients, to the immigrants themselves, I think one of the biggest questions that's going around in the community is how do I self-deport? People are so scared and they rather self-deport than get caught in what's happening across the country. Because I mean, it's very visible on the TV what's happening in Minnesota and in other parts of the country. For Pete's sake, they're killing U.S. citizens. So it's really scary for immigrants, especially if they have no documents. So they're thinking of self-deporting.
Bryant, how about you? From your perspective down in Sussex County, what does immigration enforcement actually look like right now? And are you seeing increased activity? What concerns are coming up around transparency or accountability, especially with ICE?
Yeah, thank you for having me as well. And I will echo the things that Maria said, especially, with voter data, that doesn't just affect some of our immigrant population, it also affects all of the U.S. citizens of Delaware. But to answer your question, you know, I think one of the biggest issues we have right now is that it's not talked enough about what is happening on the ground and how it's really like a slow bleed here, right? We're not seeing maybe the big operations like you would in a city like Minneapolis, but you do have this slow bleed where it's really regional, right? Like Delmarva especially down here, it's regional. We're affected also by what's happening across the border in Maryland, and we know that recently there's been some significant changes in how local government in Maryland works with ICE. And even though 287G agreements are banned in Delaware, it's not the same for Maryland, and a lot of the ICE activity has been coming from the Maryland side. And so you have situations where people are being detained on their way to work. Right. So on the back roads in Sussex County, maybe close to Maryland, where ICE can easily just come over the border. People may be getting stopped. So what we've been hearing is that a lot of the arrests that have been happening are usually warrantless, and really. A lot of these folk don't have time to respond to what is happening because they're being boxed in by vehicles to the point of potentially getting themselves injured in an accident, right? And then being apprehended in sometimes very violent ways. And I know that there's been an article already about this, but one of my neighbors was detained in Georgetown in a very violent way, but also in a warrantless arrest. And we
Are
know
people
that. Go
are
ahead.
people carrying their papers with them now?
So, that's an interesting question because so it depends on your particular status, but some people are required by law to carry their documents with them, right? And usually, our clients through our immigration legal services, we've always advised them of those types of things. But now it seems that we're having to have more of those conversations, particularly. When we talk to our clients about safety planning, when we talk to them about risk assessments, of their situation, right? Those are things that we have to talk more about. Is telling people it is a good idea to have your documents on you. I know me personally, I've have felt the need to have my passport, which is crazy to say just because I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born and raised, in New Jersey to two U.S. citizen parents, but just for the simple fact
Sure,
of me speaking Spanish and looking the way that I do, I do feel like I have a higher risk than someone who might be a white citizen.
sure.
And I think it's important to talk about things like that in that way too, because I think people are not fully understanding the gravity of that situation. I think a lot of people still want to make this or think about this in a way where it's like, oh no, like look, they're detaining people who have no status, right? Before it was, oh look, they're detaining criminals, but we know that that's not the case
No, no,
because
no.
the
It's
the, the
gone way,
data
way farther than that. And
exactly.
let's be real here. Governor Westmore of Maryland's a Trump target. So there's going to be no let up there. Let me jump to this question. Um, can you explain the barriers that can leave people without documents? How is ICE targeting them across the spectrum, including those with legal pending status? And why no one, regardless of status, should be subjected to any cruelties or violations of their Fourth Amendment rights?
Right. So one of the ideals of this country, right, is due process, right? You're innocent until proven guilty, and that someone should have the chance to defend themselves. Right. So obviously, we know that no matter who you are, whether you're undocumented or you're a U.S. citizen, you have a right to due process. And unfortunately, it's in the benefit of this administration to target people who we for not to label anyone, but we call low-hanging fruit, right? So people who, for example, people who have had an opportunity in the past to present themselves before immigration court, but for whatever reason haven't been able to. And a deportation order exists for them, right? Though that would be like a type of person that the administration could give you a lot of reasons to justify apprehending them and not allowing them to have a due process and possibly even violating their constitutional rights just for the simple fact that they may already have an existing deportation order. Now, in those types of cases, even if someone does have that, and even if there is reason for them to potentially be removed from the country, they still need to be able to give a reason as to what is it that the individual was doing that made raise suspicion for you to apprehend them or to
Right.
detain them, right? So like it can't just be, I saw a man on the corner who was brown and was speaking Spanish, right?
Of course.
Right. So those are the things that really are really worrying.
Let
And
me get
what,
Maria to
yeah,
jump in here for
yeah.
just a moment. Maria, in 2025, you raised a question at the AG's town hall that helped move immigration protections forward. Can you talk about how community voices actually influence state action and why that pressure matters right now?
Well, we were trying to pass a couple of bills. And I kept hearing over and over and over again, the Attorney General is against it. The Attorney General is against it. So I was lucky enough to find myself in a community meeting with the Attorney General, who was speaking on how much she cared about immigrants. So I just basically stood up and asked her, if you care about immigrants, why are you standing in the way of this protection? And I think it took her aback and it made her think, because you know, sometimes people don't do it because they want to be mean. They do it because they don't think it through. It doesn't impact their lives. They're candy white. They got money. They're 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 immune or they're protected from these feelings. So I think it brought her back to reality that I brought it up in a public hearing. And I think if I leave just one message today, is that you have to preach to the powers to be. You can't be scared.
Right.
You can't be scared. You have to say it like it is and stand alone if you have to stand alone.
Well, apparently it worked because shortly after she announced explicit support for
Mhm.
uh, protections. For both of you, let me ask this question. As the ACLU Delaware and other advocates are asking Governor Meyer to close backdoor data sharing opportunities that ICE is taking advantage of now, why is it so important to put guardrails in place right now? And what other kinds of protective policies or protections do you think our state still needs to adopt to really protect people?
Do you want to take that?
I can start. Yeah, no problem. Um, so so going back to your original question about why is it important to protect data, I mean, we're already seeing what this administration is trying to do with people's personal data. One, last year, they gave access to people's personal data to these, extra governmental organizations that we have no idea what they did with, right? Like had no regard for our privacy. So there's that. And then there's the issue that we know from this administration that they're trying to interfere in our elections, right? And so there's this very real fear that they can purge voter rolls of people they deem
That's the
unworthy,
real, bottom line here, of course.
right? Exactly. And the other thing too is we with vulnerable communities, you have all this information about them. What's stopping them from saying, "Hey, kind of like what has happened unfortunately in our town of Laurel where we had the police department sharing the names and the addresses of Haitian community members. Like what's to stop the feds from getting that and just saying like, "Oh, look, here are all the Haitians. Let's go round them up."
Right.
Right? So unfortunately, I wouldn't put it past this current administration because just based off of what we've seen. But in terms of what we can continue to do, in the state, I think we need to protect everyone's data, including those who have driving privilege. And Maria, you may know more, more of this than I do, but I don't think there has been any like real movement on how we protect people who have driving privilege cards in the state of Delaware because all of them are people who don't have a status.
Really tough. Maria?
Well, one of the things that I'm getting in Delaware and Brian, I don't know if you're getting this, but it's like people are walking on eggshells. They don't want to talk about it. I think they think like the Germans did back in during Hitler's time, that if we don't talk about it, we don't look at it, we don't see it. It's not really happening. So I think we as a community need to do a better job in enforcing the legislation and the governor to protect that driver's privilege card data, like we're doing with the voter data. I mean, I joined along with I think your organization and a couple of other organizations opposing the federal government from suing Delaware to get our voting data. I I just think that we need to take a stand. I mean, we need to take an aggressive stand. There's no time for it's an urgent ask. It's an urgent call. There's an urgency about what's happening because it's starting slowly in Delaware, but if they get away with X and Y, then they come back and try C and D. That's why we need to make sure that this House bill that we're passing passes. And we got to get on the state legislatures because they don't want to they say to me, well, I don't want to shine a spotlight on the issue because then you have unintended consequences. And my throwback to that is the spotlight's already there. The unintended consequences are already happening. We have kids that go home and the parents are not there. And the other thing that we need to do besides getting a hold of the legislatures by the neck and holding them accountable, we also need to do a statewide uh, comprehensive community awareness campaign because even our community, our immigrant community, do not want to believe that this is happening. Or
Absolutely.
it doesn't happen. It will not happen to me.
Also, if local agents aren't following the law, it can make people question the value of knowing what their rights are. So, why is rights knowledge still essential at this moment, especially for our immigrant communities and their allies facing increased enforcement and surveillance? Certainly. Why is it so important then to know what your rights are?
Because if you don't know what your rights are, then you don't know when they're being violated. And people need to know when they're being violated. People need to be able to speak up when their rights are being violated. And the reality is that there are some folk that won't be able to speak up on behalf of themselves, but that's why we need to be aware of those things so that we can speak up on their behalf, right? And we already know that rights violations are happening. Like I said, last couple weeks ago it was that this man was no warrant was issued, no questions really were asked other than to stop him and to break his windshield and to take him and his son. Thankfully, his son was a U.S. citizen, so he was able to tell us that story, right? But that's what we need. We need people to be able to tell us those stories so we can say, hey, these are rights that are being violated. And whether, we can get accountability today, that's debatable, but my hope is that we can get accountability one day. Um, and the other thing too is that it may save an immigrant family. It could potentially save them in their case if they are detained or say if someone breaks into their house, it's ICE breaking into their house and they're saying ask them all these questions or trying to get them to admit to things, right? If they know that they have the right to remain silent and they're saying I choose to exercise my right to remain silent, that may potentially stop them from giving any other information that they could use against them. And also understanding that if they don't have to sign anything, right? They have a right to refuse to sign anything, right? It may save them from potentially being fast tracked for deportation, right? So like those things are still important for people to understand, even if we're in a highly aggressive police state, in the moment.
Maria,
People still need to know those things.
how about upstate here where you are? What if families feel threatened or unsure? What resources or community networks are you telling them to connect with?
Well, right now we're trying to we're forming Newcastle Cares or no Newcastle Helps, like Sussex Helps, where they have an array of volunteers. And one of the first things that we're going to do, not only not only inform people of their rights, like Brian was talking about, but also an awareness of what's happening, an awareness that you need to understand that your family may be alone if they take you. Or if they take you and your wife, where are your children? Who are you leaving your children with? If you have money, I mean, I think that there needs to be, and this is what we're working on, is a preparedness campaign so that people are prepared with the kind of tactics that they're using right now. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We've seen what happens. They break your window, they take you out, they arrest you, and sometimes you don't even know where you're going for where you are for 2 or 3 days. So that's why I think an awareness to the community that that they need to be prepared in case it happens to them and continuously raise awareness that there is a possibility because this administration is all about hate. It's not about love.
Brian, do you agree?
I absolutely agree, and I will say that that is something that thank you for pointing out some of the efforts that have been happening in Sussex County, and Maria, you and I are thinking is the same, and that's why I really hope that we can push towards a statewide effort and not just a county. I mean, definitely it has to happen in the county. There's county specific things that we need to coordinate, but I hope that there really is a statewide effort, a push for that, because we do need to get people to understand what can potentially happen, what are the risks, and more than anything, safety plan, right?
Mm.
That's a big thing that we're starting to do now with everyone is you have to figure these things out. It can't be figured out when you're in detention.
But that's right.
You have to know what
Or
you're
in the
going to
heat of
do
the moment
now.
when you're
Ahead of time, ahead of time.
Exactly. Exactly. Because
I
go ahead. Yeah.
I'm hoping that statewide we can pull together a resource of lawyers, of pro bono lawyers that are available when someone is pulled, when someone's arrested, or when someone wants to self-deport. That is a big need in our community across the state. That because people don't have that type of money. But even if they do have the money, they still need that lawyer mentality, and that's where we're lacking. The other thing is the the community help. You know how the organizations and the funding sources came together during COVID? They took the money and they put it in a I don't know in a jar, and they said this money is to help people for, during COVID. So why can't we get these organizations, these funders, to start a fund, a Delaware Helps Fund or Delaware Can Fund to help these immigrant families. So when the husband is arrested or the wage earner is arrested, we have a fund that we can uh, tap to pay that person's rent or to buy them food or to um, help them while the situation is you get a remedy for the situation. That's where the needs are right there.
Right.
we need to do this again, but I fear we have to wrap it up now. What would you like to leave our listeners with today? What do you want them to understand about protecting these communities? I'm not Hispanic, but I sure want to help. People like me who are on the same page, who are kindred spirits, what can we do?
Volunteer to drive somebody to work. Join the group, join the statewide volunteer group, helping drive people to a doctor's appointment or to a doctor's or to a hospital or to work or to school or to church. Pass Bill 94. Take a stand. Don't I don't know, I think that state legislatures need to get uh, some valor. They need
Yeah, some courage.
some courage, they need to say, what if it was me?
Right.
What if they come after all blonde hair people?
Right.
I mean, they put all the Japanese in encampments.
Right. It's absolutely imperative that, people don't make this your problem, not my problem, or, we need to raise our voices but we need to be effective with things like HB 94, right?
And others. And others.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say HB 94, HB 58, which is focused on law enforcement profiling based on, actual or suspected citizenship or immigration status, and there's also HB 60, which is about protecting personal identifiable information, with things like the driving privilege card. But I also just, wanted to say, yes, being neighborly is really important. If you don't know how to get connected, you can contact La Esperanza, you can contact LACC. We, just like Maria said, we're working on trying to bring these efforts together to make sure that we're working to protect our immigrant neighbors. But also stay informed as to what's happening. A lot of the reasons why, and maybe this is not the sole reason, there's other reasons, nefarious reasons, but some of the big reasons why people feel like they can hide their head in the sand is because they're not hearing the stories from the community. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the community that are experiencing this, they don't feel like they have a voice. So I'm here to say
Very
it's
important.
happening. It's
Yeah.
happening here in Delaware. It's no longer a situation of should we prepare for the worst? It's preparing
It's
for what's
here.
happening now. It's here,
And by
right?
the
People
way,
are being
Brian,
detained. Go ahead.
there's no guarantee that, they won't come again for other groups, that this could not happen, if things sort of disintegrate. This could happen
The-
to others as well.
yeah,
I
immigrants
hope.
are, sorry, I just want to say immigrants are the canary in the coal mine. Their rights, if their rights are being eroded, our rights are being eroded. So we have to remember that. Our rights being eroded anywhere, it's gonna come back on us US citizens. So we're not all safe, right? So we need to hone in on this one thing. Like you said, it's easy to say that's their problem, but it's not going to be their problem for long.
I
Mm.
hope our governor is listening.
I
And
hope so too.
I thank both of you. This is wonderful. We need to do this again because it's a huge topic, and sadly, it's not going away anytime soon. So,
Or
thank
maybe we can do it when we're finished with the organizing of Newcastle County helps and Sussex helps. So and statewide volunteer legal services. Maybe we can do it again to promote that what is happening. And if all these bills pass, we can publicly thank our state legislature for the courage. It takes courage.
Well, I hope you're right. Thank you so much, Maria Matos of the Latin American Community Center and Bryant Garcia from La Esperanza in Georgetown. So, friends, Delaware has a choice right now to put real guardrails in place or stay silent and complacent while families bear the cost of federal outreach and repeated violations of the Fourth Amendment and due process. Action alerts are live through the ACLU of Delaware, urging Governor Meyer to set clear boundaries and block backdoor data sharing, and lawmakers to pass HB 94 to protect sensitive locations. If you believe accountability should come before harm, not after, this, my friends, is the moment to act. Thank you.